Hello everyone and welcome back to Planet Zoo Franchise Mode. It's been a long time since our last episode and there is a reason for that. I've been looking to create a sort of visitor centre for this big Taste of Africa habitat that we put in place, but I genuinely think I overexerted myself. As a result, this build has been through so many redesigns and changes that I almost sickened myself and had to take a small break. So this build is actually my third attempt and third variation on it, and quite honestly I'm really glad that it's happened this way. I'm still learning how all of these tools and pieces work, and a lot of the things I was doing with the first versions of the build were way too advanced for my current level of experience with the game, and when they weren't going to plan, I was getting annoyed and it was really disrupting the flow of the build. You can probably see, based on the date, that quite a bit of time has passed in this zoo, and it's all been while I've been testing water features and pathing in previous versions, and they've eventually been scrapped. After those issues, I did have a bit of a word with myself, reminded myself that the advanced stuff's going to come, and it's a huge project that I've decided to do, especially given my overall lack of experience, and for now it's probably best to just keep it simple. So that's exactly what I'm doing here, starting by mapping out the basic foundations of the building, and we're just covering the whole area with pathing for now. We'll be putting in our own floor to hide the paths, and then just for a little bit of variation, change the colouring and things like that. Now the layout of the building is going to be a food court on the right hand side and a nice open viewing gallery on the left. I wanted a bit of elevation with this one as well, just to make it stand out a bit more and give us some levels to play with. That's why I've created the steps going up and onto a platform. The viewing area on the left is going to give guests an opportunity to see the giraffes right up close, as we'll be putting the elevated feeder right next to the windows. The usual pathing issues of course did present themselves, but I actually managed to sort them fairly quickly, which is testament to my own personal development and something I was very proud of. As always, we're going with basic plaster walls and wood logs to give a bit of contrast, and once the basic structure's complete, we'll be looking at more advanced stuff like making some timber frames and really fleshing out the decoration so it isn't just this flat, lifeless structure. I wanted our food court to have 2 floors, with a top deck that could act as a viewing area and some extra seating, perhaps even a few education boards or animal talks. I was very pleased with the fact that I managed to get the pathing working. It took a few tweaks because I really hate how chunky the paths are when you elevate them. I just find it very cramped looking if you don't slightly overextend the height. They also just look absolutely awful from below, so later on we give this area a ceiling to hide the underside of the path. After completing the basic framework, we shifted to the viewing area and dropped down our glass. I am actually thinking about removing the glass and having a completely open timber framework in place instead, just leaving it open to the elements to visitors so they're not forced to look through the glass and get a really close-up experience with the animals, almost as if you can reach out and touch them. For now though, the glass was fine. I then played around with some of the Africa Fence theme posts, but eventually picked the New World ones. I just really like the look of these, and they fit a little bit better with what I'm going for in terms of the overall feel of the build. And once the fenced areas were sorted, I put down the wood plank flooring just to hide the path beneath it. The overall kind of look of this building, I want to kind of make it look a little bit like a Tudor house that was redeveloped, I suppose, because we are in the UK and we just want to try and keep a little bit of a theme around that. I'm already predicting though that the guests are going to walk through the walls. I'm not worried about that right now, but we do need to prepare for that immersion breaking issue. I just wish guests would recognise walls and not just follow a path through them, but I guess we can't have everything. The next step was to decorate the vending area. We've got a Chief Beef, information kiosk and gulpy soda here. And for now we've got plaster walls in place, but like I said, we'll flesh that out later. I wanted to put on a thatched roof, did a little bit of experimenting, and rather than closing it off completely, I decided it would be nice to make this like a feature wall with some planters above the shops. I just think this will really make the area look more attractive and give it a unique feel that the guests are going to really enjoy. I also didn't like the idea of the thatched roof backing out onto the roof terrace, so we're going to have the roof almost cut in half with a glass pane window running across. I could then create a wooden frame for the terrace area and put some hanging lamps up as well as some other little features just to really round it all off. I was thinking back whilst doing this build and recording the audio about why the first 2 versions of it went so wrong. And it wasn't just the size of the project that's made it tough, but in taking inspiration from some of the big Planet Zoo YouTubers, the likes of Delay Designer and Paulsley, who I absolutely love watching, I realised these guys have been playing far longer than I have, probably since beta, and they know a ton about the game, and I kind of let myself get fooled into the idea of thinking that because I've seen this I can probably do it myself, and that was never going to be the case. So one of the best pieces of advice I can give if you're just starting out in this game is don't be afraid to make really basic small structures and stay small within your own personal means. Keep your goals small and grow gradually, because these things do take time, patience and a lot of practice to get right. I could easily have cut this part of the project out and gone back to expanding the sections we currently have, but that would mean a lot of time wasted and a huge content gap, which I really don't want to create, because that's all part of the process as well. So I am going to persevere with a build. I think the basics are in place, and once they're there we can chip away at those little details and push it to the next level. Maybe I'll do that off camera, or maybe I'll do a little episode decorating room by room so that we can really see everything get fleshed out and taken on to the next level. It's definitely been a steep learning curve, and as we develop further I will be focusing more on smaller scale stuff again for a while. I would like in the next build to be a reptile centre though, because I want to move our saltwater crocodiles and tortoises into a new habitat to make way for our new entrance area. And we'll bring in some snakes, some lizards too, but that's another episode entirely, so let's get back to the build that we're currently going on. As you can see, I've made a colossal error in designing this greenhouse to go on top of the vendors. I should not have put glass in first. If you've played any of this game, you'll know how difficult it can be to decorate in structures that already have external pieces in place, especially in small cramped spaces like this one. I should have removed the glass and the roof section to make life easier, but we managed to cope alright building this on the ground here and just moving it into place. I will have to keep in mind for future builds though that it's certainly best to build from the ground up, putting everything in place on one floor before you then put the next one on. At the moment it's still a little bit of a flat structure and there isn't too much about it, but in a couple of episodes I think it'll really get there. I really just want to get this. The problem that I'm having at the moment is there's not enough time while we're building to actually experience the zoo in action. And I would like to do an episode where we do a lovely long tour or follow a guest around for a whole episode or something, just so that you can actually see what's going on, and maybe do some pretend animal cameras so that you get a day in the life of this animal and things like that. We could even do some little shorts and you'll really be able to see those habitats being lived in and guests enjoying their time in the zoo, because all we've done so far is build. Anyway, we finished this off by placing some tables down, and it took me a while to decide which one I wanted because I thought those African tables were just disappearing into the ground pretty much, so the darker wood ones seemed to fit better. I did mix it up and try to put some different tables in, but that didn't really sit right with me either, so we eventually switched back to the dark wood ones. We then put down some ATMs, bins, advertising boards just to finish it all off. I really like the new advertising boards they've brought out, especially that you can customize them. We may have a look at that. I'll maybe design some off-camera stuff and then we can put them in. I also like that I've seen a few YouTubers use them to create ponds with fish in them, which I think is really nice and a really good idea and a nice creative use of these new tools that they've given us. So I'll be looking to do that in the coming episodes. Maybe not immediately, I just want to get a zoo in place and ready to go. Next up, it was probably time to work on the terraced area. Now, I haven't decided what to do with it yet. It could be more seating or potentially a place where we can have some talks, like I said earlier on. Another idea I had was to completely remove the middle section and have a huge tree growing up through the ceiling to create a real statement piece for the build. Then we could spread the seating downstairs out a bit more and it would make both floors have an extra dimension to the decorations. Now, because of the extra metre or two that we've put in between the walls, we've got a lot of imperfections that we're going to need to clean up, and you'll see that soon enough. But all I did was put some more 1 metre log posts in just to bridge those gaps and make it look like one complete piece. After that, you'll see there are still some issues with path trims poking out and things like that, which aren't really nice, but at the moment they're not particularly noticeable and the bulk of it has been cleaned up, and I will come back to finish it all off. Another thing I noticed when I was putting in this terrace is having extra glass, like two glass pane walls, obviously reduces the viewing of the main feature at the moment, which is those planters above the vendors. So this may actually, rather than be glass and timber, may just be a whole timber frame, and we could carry that frame on right across the terrace and put some hanging planters and lights in. Here we're just filling in a ceiling with some glass, which I think makes it look a little bit more spacious due to the reflections and stuff. and I really like that. It also hides that garish path underneath, and then it was just a case of putting in a lip to cover up the gap in the wall. As we have used some different materials for various parts of the walls, we do have a few colour discrepancies on the walls, and I tried to match things as best I could, but it's probably a case of replacing those pieces eventually, which I'll do off camera, and we'll start the next episode with a nice little roundup of any changes that I've made before we finish this off. As you can see here, we're just tidying up a few things, just giving a little bit more contrast between wood and plaster, and these are the glass. I can't remember what they're called. They're like frosted glass, so that's where we have a few colour discrepancies. But we will sort that out eventually. I'll replace them with plaster, and then we'll put nice timber beams across just to hide the joins where you can see, especially on this side where the shadows are being cast. I really like the idea of having this as like a big open glass frontage so that you can see right through and actually see the advertising boards that we're going to activate in place. We don't have a staff area for this. I'm actually going to build that right across the road, and that'll be able to service this area when we move our entryway into the habitat to a completely different place. At the moment it was on the opposite side, I think, where we had our original staff area, and I very quickly realised that the staff area was far too small to service the sheer magnitude of the habitat. It also meant that we were struggling with power issues and things because we built it so far away from everything that we've already got. The final thing to do was just replace the current grey path with black path, because I think that adds a nice little bit of shadow beneath those boards and really rounds off the build with a nice little bit of contrast. Pretty happy with how that's turned out. Obviously there's a lot of work still to do. I tried adjusting some of the colours of these glass windows, but they just weren't working, and popping that back to grey kind of matched things up, but I still wasn't too sure of it. Anyway, into the viewing area. So the next thing to do was just to place all of our information boards down and stick some seats on the outskirts. And I wanted this to have a main feature that wasn't just the giraffe viewing area, which obviously is going to be a huge attraction for people. I thought about putting in some more tables and things, but then I just thought that would be far too similar to the other building that we've got opposite it. So a water feature seemed like the best way to go. This went through a few variations and changes, but I eventually settled on this kind of like a little pond that would be elevated. It took a little while to get right, but eventually we got the glass in properly. The path was causing a little bit of an issue with the barrier, but we managed to get it in, get it at a decent height so that the water level was raised enough that it would be nice to look at rather than it being quite low down, which did happen a few times, as you can see there. Once that was in place though, it was just a case of rounding it off with some plaster and giving it a nice little bit of decoration. I did want to make a real statement with it though, and the first sort of passes that I did playing with fountains and water sprays and things like that weren't quite working out, as you can see here. So we put in a few more rocks, and then I had this idea to use the elephant sculptures to have it as if they're spraying the water into the pond, which I think would look really nice. Now this took me a long time. As you can probably tell, the size of these water fountains, the bases for them is pretty big, and the elephant trunks on the sculptures aren't as big. So I had to do a lot of tweaking, and I quickly realised as well after putting the larger elephant sculpture in place that it was just spraying water onto the decking and didn't work, so we then had to move everything around again. What you're about to see though is the finished project, something that I was really happy with. So we've got the mother elephant here and the baby elephant on this one, but that quickly changed and we put the mother on the bigger platform and the baby on the smaller platform, spraying water into the pond, and I just think it looks really nice. It does kind of mess the height up a little bit and may mean that we eventually get rid of this entire structure and just make this outdoor timber frame with some nice canopies and things just to really finish it off, so the guests get a little bit of cover for when they're sitting down or trying to view the giraffes, but the whole area looks more like an outdoor space as opposed to this building, because we probably can't really put a roof on that without it looking completely stupid. So that looks like it's going to be outdoor decking. And then we just needed to put our barrier in place. At the moment it looks a little bit janky coming out of the building like that, so we will be sorting that off camera. But we wanted it to carry on into this new section that I've built, which is a little cave. Now the cave is really nice. It gives guests a little bit of coverage and a little bit of variation to the tour. It also means that they can look in and see animals sleeping in this cave. I had a look at the kind of natural habitats for these animals. The warthogs normally live in caves and holes and stuff like that, so we do see them resting in here. We also have the ostriches coming in here, and I think I saw an African buffalo come in here at one point. So there's plenty of scope for guests to see animals sleeping. Let's finish with a little tour of what we've finished off with. So we've got some lovely viewing spaces there. The habitat got a little bit of fleshing out. I threw some trees down just to finish this off and give you guys something to look at. And I was really pleased with how it all turned out. If you're really pleased and want to see this carry on, please give me a like, a comment and a subscribe. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it has taken so long if you've been waiting for it. I hope to see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.